In a historic move, the British Parliament session is underway, and this is as the lawmakers will be voting on Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal that was struck with the European Union. Johnson faces that uphill task of convincing the parliamentarians to back that deal. And that's a front on which his predecessor, Theresa May, remember, had failed as many as 3 times. The British Prime Minister struck that deal with Brussels on Friday after making several concessions on Northern Ireland. The last time that lawmakers met on a Saturday was way back in 1982 when the Falkland War broke out. Earlier, in a setback for the UK Prime Minister, several parties have already said that they will be opposing that deal. And on the forefront was the Brexit party leader Nigel Farage, who said that Johnson's deal is almost the same as the one proposed by Theresa May earlier. Scottish parties also have vowed to reject that agreement, Scotland saying that it wants to remain in the single EU single market and not pay the Eurozone tariffs. That's the major bone of contention there. If the deal is rejected, then Johnson will have to request the European Union for a further Brexit extension. Remember, the UK is scheduled to leave the EU on the 31st of October. This will probably be Johnson's only opportunity to ensure an orderly Brexit. This, as several industries fear that a no-deal Brexit would downgrade the British economy and will have far-reaching implications. Apart from the opposition members of Parliament, Johnson also faces disapproval from the Northern Irish allies. As per the agreement, remember, Northern Ireland will fall under the UK customs territory, meaning that the region will be subjected to European Union tariffs and value-added tax. The decision has been condemned by the Northern Irish Party, which backs Johnson's Conservatives. Meanwhile, there are several calls for the cancellation of Brexit altogether. An anti-Brexit campaign group released a video with the message that said Britain now wants to remain.
Thank you. I'm grateful tomorrow.
And our correspondent Holly Hudson is now joining us live from London. It's going to be a crucial few hours ahead as the Parliament is all set to vote on that deal that was struck by Boris Johnson. Give us a better sense of where the parliamentarians stand at this point. Major divisions on a number of issues.
Yes, it's a very crucial day for Boris Johnson here. Super Saturday, as it's now being dubbed, as you mentioned in your introduction there, that Parliament haven't sat on a weekend since the UK went to war with the Falklands in 1982, 37 years. So it gives you a bit of a sense, an idea of exactly how crucial, how important the clock is and how much the clock is ticking down on that Brexit deadline of the 31st of October for Boris Johnson. He himself is facing his own war in many ways here in Parliament today, and the big question is, does he have enough votes, enough backing for his new revised deal that he secured in Brussels earlier this week to get enough backing, to get enough MPs on board for his new deal? The consensus at the moment is that he may just scrape it. We're hearing that a few Tory MPs that have turned independent, those Tory MPs that he, of course, withdrew the whip from earlier this year because of their support, their lack of support, I should say, for no deal. We're hearing some of them turning towards Boris Johnson getting on board. We're also hearing that the DUP, of course, will not support this deal. They say it undermines the integrity of the union, and that the UK, we've just heard from the deputy leader in the House of Commons behind me, he says the UK should leave as one nation. They feel that this deal really does set Northern Ireland apart from the UK in the fact that it still aligns with the EU on certain regulations and rules, customs regulations and rules. The SNP we've heard from in Parliament also saying that they won't back this deal. The Liberal Democrats, the Remain party, of course, they say there's been no economic analysis on this at all. So how are they expected to vote on this deal when such analysis hasn't been done? They say it's rushed, and they're also, of course, as they always have been, calling for a referendum on any deal. They're saying that the only reason the Prime Minister Minister doesn't want to do that is because he knows the public would not support it. And crucially as well, the opposition, Labour, they're saying that they understand the fatigue that the Prime Minister, the public, he claims the public are feeling with regards to Brexit, that they want Brexit done, but this is a worse deal than Theresa May's, and it would just signal the starting pistol on a race to the bottom, so says Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of Labour. So big divisions. Boris Johnson has just 287 MPs. He needs 320 to get enough support for his deal, this meaningful vote today. Will he do it? We'll have to wait and see, but it could signal the start of the Brexit process here in Britain, could set things in motion, or we could be back to square one, and he might have to request a delay, another extension from the European Union.
Absolutely, and just a reminder here to our viewers, Theresa May had failed 3 times. And as Holly is telling us, many have regarded this deal as being worse than Theresa May's. We are going to be keeping a close eye on the latest coming in from the Parliament. Stay with me, Holly. Now, if Prime Minister Johnson's deal is approved by the UK Parliament, then Brexit will happen as scheduled. But what happens if the deal is rejected? And this is why the next few hours are so crucial. If the deal is rejected, then Prime Minister Johnson will be required by law to request the European Union for another Brexit extension. The UK can then proceed to strike another divorce deal or head for a no-deal Brexit. Finally, the UK could hold another Brexit referendum altogether. That's where things get tricky. A second referendum is something that Prime Minister Johnson is unlikely to endorse. Remember, Johnson was the face of the Brexit movement when the UK chose to leave the European Union in 2016. However, some lawmakers, including those from Johnson's Conservative and opposition Labour Party, are ready to back a referendum to end the 3 years of political stalemate. A referendum now would require the approval of the government, which will have to set aside funds to organise a public vote. While calls for Brexit cancellation have been on the rise, some are sceptical that funds will be wasted if the referendum gives out the same result as the earlier one, which is to leave the European Union. Holly, given the fact that a no-deal Brexit is also a possibility that the next few hours hold, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has made it clear that the UK will leave the European Union with or without a deal. At the same time, that would mean that he would not be supportive of another referendum taking place.
Yes, that is what the Liberal Democrats, the Remain Party, have been calling for. And actually, as this vote is taking place today, there is a march here in London of around 1 million people calling for a people's vote. So that sort of gives you an idea of just how tense things are still here in the UK, despite the fatigue and the frustration that Boris Johnson still touts as being the reason for getting Brexit done before that 31st of October deadline. But there's many which ways in which this could go here today. Boris Johnson could, of course, at the number, he could scrape through and get the support he needs for his deal, which would set in motion the Brexit process. But as you say, he could also be forced to go to the EU. Legally, he will be forced to go to the EU and ask for an extension. There's also the option there is what we call an amendment taking place here in the UK in Parliament, just behind me in the next hour or so, where MPs will vote on whether to actually request that extension already. So the vote may not actually even go ahead if that's the case. So there's many which ways in which this could turn out, a lot of ifs and buts, as there always is in the Brexit process, twists and turns. But we may well today see the start of the Brexit process. We may well be going back to the EU for an extension, but no deal is, of course, still on the cards.
And a lot of those possibilities still on the card. Uncertainty in the air, to say the least. We're going to leave it there for the moment. Holly Hudson getting us the very latest. But of course, keep coming back to you as and when further updates trickle in.